Supply side problems may have been holding back our economy, maybe they're easing, but the problem is growth is a function of demand as well as supply. And to understand what demand means, it can help to look right down at the detail at individual households. Ultimately, demand is what we spend. Meet Becks. Becks is a graduate. She lives in Liverpool with her two university friends. She earns well, £30,000 a year in her late 20s. And crucially, Becks is comfortable, even despite recent cost of living crisis. If we look at what Becks spending looks like in a typical month, that's her salary there, £2,500 a month. Tax, rent, bills, costs, things like fuel and food, the things she has to pay for, still leaves her in a typical month this year with about £330 in her pocket at the end of the month. Enough to go out a couple of times, see friends, maybe go to local gigs. Mostly local spending, and that's important. Here's the challenge. On the demand side economically, let's look at the forecast of what's going to happen to Beck over the next 12 months. So some of her costs have gone up, her salary's increased a bit, but look at the effect of all those cost of living increases, higher energy costs, rental cost increases, and of course, the cost of food going up. Taken together, her spending has almost halved. Now that means that she's got a lot less money in her pocket to spend on the things she enjoys. It means that she's going to be squeezed to save as much, maybe towards a down payment on her first flat. And it means probably more nights in, Sky Movies and baked beans, rather than the local pub. The problem is there are lots of people like Becks in the economy, and the effect of all those little decisions that we're making to spend less is that cumulatively we're all spending less. We've cut back on non-essential spending. We've cut back on unnecessary or discretionary trips we make. We're spending less on food, substituting more expensive food for cheaper food. And as that's happening, our consumer confidence has declined. That in turn means on the margin, we might prefer to save a bit more rather than spending a bit more. And that's bad news for the economy. And so when we turn to those GDP statistics, this is what we see. We see that discretionary spending on things like arts, entertainment, recreation has come down in August, a month when you'd expect it to be high during good weather. We've also seen things like people deferring maintenance and essential spending, because if you can defer it, people are deferring it. And taken together, that means the GDP numbers have been hit hard. You might expect to see production come down during the summer months. You don't want to see services spending come down during the summer months. That's about 80% of our whole economy is services in the UK. So that small decrease is a big deal. And let's look at those GDP numbers that we've recently discovered. Look, here's the story. We're going right back in time now to 2008 and the financial crisis. After that nasty period of falls month on month, we had this period of relative stability and a relatively flat period in which growth over about a decade was about 2% a year. Coronavirus hits, and of course, tremendous contraction followed by the boom afterwards. But look at this, and this is the puzzle that Kwasi Kwarteng and Liz Truss face. Their avowed intent to get growth back up to 2.5% isn't what we're seeing. Actually, over the last few months, annualised growth closer to 2% than 2.5%. And the danger is, with those demand pressures and lower consumer confidence, we might see even less growth next year, possibly a contraction, and the dreaded R word, recession.